Hey everyone, in this video we'll be creating a small large language model application. We'll be making calls to OpenAI, getting some answer, and to use that I'll take the example of the Cricket World Cup that we saw last time. Last time we were using an online tool called Gemini to get our answers, even we use ChatGPT. Uh, let's now interact with OpenAI's API directly. So you want to build an application. What you'll do is you'll get an OpenAI key by registering to OpenAI portal. And once you have the key, you can interact with the raw model directly. Okay. So these are some standard imports, the OS import or dot environment import to basically load the environment variables. Basically, I've saved the key somewhere on my repository and I'm just pulling the key from there and calling an OpenAI method on that, okay, and then storing it in a client. So this is just the standard part. Now what I'm doing is I'm creating a function, and the way to create a function in Python is you just write def and space the function name. This is the first parameter that I expect in this, which is a question, and the second parameter is model. For the second parameter, I've hard coded a value GPT-4o. So if you are not, while calling the function, if you're not passing any parameter, it will just take GPT-4o, which is the model that I'm using. And GPT-4o is a relatively older model. It was launched in the second half of 2024. So its knowledge is till only that point. Right now we are having GPT 5.3, which probably would be trained very recently. Now this is just comment regarding what this function is doing, so nothing to look here. This is the way to call OpenAI API. Now the thing is that the way we are defining a function here, OpenAI at its end would have defined some SDK, some functions that we need to interact with to get to interact with the LLM. And the way to call that is just using client chat completions. What is client? Client is this OpenAI, right? So we are actually interacting with OpenAI classes, functions, method that they would have created, and their function would be expecting these parameters. One would be model, one would be messages, right? So this is just a standard way to call, interact with the OpenAI APIs or the LLMs, whether whatever model it is GPT-4o, GPT 5.3, anything. The first parameter that I'm passing is model, which will be just hard coded, and the second parameter message. You see, this is a list of dictionaries. This is a list, and we have first dictionary, second dictionary, and dictionary has key, role as system, role as user. Now the point to note here is there are two kind of messages that we can pass. One is a system message, one is a user message. Now the system message is the behavior, how I want my LLM to behave, how I want it to respond, what is its personality. So this system message is nothing but the personality of LLM, and the user message is the actual question that we are asking. So now I'm telling it behave like a helpful assistant, and then I'll give the question, and then it will give us some response. Now that response may be in the form of some class, some method, some dictionary, and this is the way to just access the actual response. From the responses, I'll access choices. Within choices, I'll have like maybe it's a dictionary, so I'm accessing 0th index, and within that I'm accessing then messages and content. We will see that, right? So I'm now created a function. Let me run this one first, then let's run this one. So I've now created a function, and now I'll call this function. So I'm calling this function here, and I'm passing my user question here. You could directly copy this question and paste it here also, right? So you'll be basically calling this function, and let's run this. So I'm asking who won the Cricket World Cup 2026, and I'm passing this question here, and it will interact with OpenAI API, and it will give some response, return some response, which I will print. So let's see. It's saying as of last update, there is no information available about winner of 2026 World Cup because this model doesn't know what happened beyond 2025, right? I told you that this can behave the way we aren't want it to behave. So let's say I say that, hey, you are Batman, or let's say you are Iron Man, behave and respond like Iron Man. Okay, so if I do that, it will take Iron Man's personality. Let's run this function and let's run the question again. So it's like behaving in, it's answering the way it thinks Iron Man will answer. I'm good, but I'm not a time traveler. I can't tell you who won the Cricket World Cup because my data was this. And but if you were to ask who saved the world from an alien invasion using nothing but a screwdriver and charm, I would have an answer for you, right? So it now took personality of the Iron Man, and this is how uh, basically if you are designing an LLM application for, let's say, uh, a healthcare system, right? So where your application will basically call people, it will hear to their response, based on that it will behave. So you can write that you are an experienced nurse, you are an experienced doctor that wants to help patient, listen to them, be empathetic in your response. Those kind of system prompts we give. If we want to have, let's say, a call center agent that is to resolve queries of, let's say, Zomato. So you can say that like people may behave in multiple ways, right? But you have to be patient with them, try to find a solution to their queries. If you don't know, just respond politely. Those kind of system messages we need to configure based on the what kind of application we are building. So that's how we configure the system messages. If you are building a code review agent, right, an LLM that reviews your code, so you can write you are an experienced solution architect and you are reviewing a code and you have to give suggestions that are technically accurate. So that is what the, and that's where, and this is nothing but prompt, we call it system prompt. Okay, so that's a part of prompt engineering as well. So I've called this function and it didn't know the answer, it just told me that I just don't know the answer. All right, how can I improve that? And the way to improve that, now what would Gemini or what would any other tool would be probably doing, it would be saying that if you don't know the answer, you do X thing. If you don't know the answer, you go to Google and do a Google search, right? If you don't know the answer, look into this document. So that kind of thing we can improve on top of this actual logic. So basically we will enhance this function, and if the response is, and we will tell it that you are a helpful assistant, but just reply yes or no. If you know the answer, straight away say yes. If you don't know the answer, say no. And we will capture this message. If this message is no, then we will pass this message. We will basically, if this message is no, we will write like if this equals to no, something like this, right? If this is equals to no, then like if this is no, then you do something, right? Then call the function for, call another function that does a Google search. Okay, so what I have done here is that I have created, let's say, another function. This function is for Google search. Let's not go into the logic of this, but it's just using some library and just passing my query and just doing a Google search here. Okay, and it will just return the search result. Fine. Now my objective is that because if it doesn't know the answer, it should ideally call this function and then get me the answer. Okay, it should basically, what should happen, the flow should be, if we pass the question, if it doesn't know the answer, if it knows the answer, it will tell us the answer. So it's a if else loop. If it knows the answer, give me the answer. If it doesn't know the answer, call another function. After calling another function, Google search will give some result, some text. That text will again give it back so that it can format us and give answer properly, right? So now I'm now again writing another function, ask OpenAI with search. Same, we passing question, we passing the GPT-4o model, right? And the way to do any additional work is we create tools, right? And you remember I was mentioning about tools in the previous video. And this is standard way to define a tool. It's just a list with a dictionary in it, where we are just saying that it's a type is function, what's the function name, some description and object, etc. Okay, now another thing I forgot to show you here, this response that it was giving, right? So let's check what is the data type of this response, right? What is the data type? So print type, and we just want to check the type of, let's say response, only of response, not of everything, just of response. And we are then accessing everything within response, right? um, with of the response. Yep, so this is done, this is done, and I need to check the type of this one. Response is not defined. Why is the response not defined? Response, okay, because response is returned from the function. So what I'll actually do is I will basically, it's returning this, right? So I will actually return the response, because I am not returning the response, I am returning the value within response. I am returning the let me return response. I'll return response, okay, and then let's now try return response. It returned response, right, and then call this. Yep, it actually returned it here. Oh yeah, so we are returning a response, and whatever is the response we are basically printing, right? Because we calling the function, this function will return a response, and that response we are printing here. Let's see what it is. So within this, if you see, this is the response we actually got, and we wanted to actually access this part of the response, right? Let me show this in a better way on the screen so that it's more clear to you. Let's prettify this, format this. Yep, so in this response, the first response we got, you saw we actually wanted to access this. That's why we had given response dot messages dot choices something something, okay. And if you see, it also gives us something called tool calls, right? None. So if we would have told it, right, if we are defining the tool calls will be some tool name, okay, based on this, something based on this, it will give us some tool name, and then it will call the tool, and it will basically call that function. Another thing to check here is that these were my input tokens, right? Prompt tokens that I gave. These are the completion tokens, that these are the tokens that it generated, and these are the total tokens. So we will actually be charged for the total tokens. So this is where the LLM observability will come into picture, that this token may equal to some cost. So this is how we will actually track the cost of our application as well. So if a human is, let's say, taking around 1000 rupee per hour, who is an assistant, a human assistant is taking 1 hour 1000 rupee per hour, and he is able to address, let's say, 5 customers. And if we are using an LLM for 5 customers query, okay, and for those 5 customers query, we can see how much cost this actually is taking. Or even LLM can take more than 5 questions, 5 people's queries, right? If the cost is less than 1000, and it will definitely be less than 1000, then that means the human will definitely be replaced in that scenario. So this is about the response that I was saying, okay. This is just pure Python and just using functions from the OpenAI, okay. Now this was about Google search. So I have a tool here. I have named this tool as Google search, and now this is just the additional thing I have defined, right? Now in this scenario, I need to actually modify my system prompt, right? Because earlier the system prompt was just that you are a helpful assistant. Now I have to tell it that you are a helpful assistant, okay. If you already know the answer, with confidence, respond directly. If you are unsure or the answer involves recent event, real-time data that you don't know about, use the Google search function. So then it will use the Google search function to find the answer. Never guess, either you know it or you search for it. So this is where I have defined the system prompt. If system prompt is not proper, it may behave in a way that you don't want it to behave, right? And then it's the same thing, right, that we did for the previous messages. We have two roles here, system and user. System prompt I have already defined. Question is that you will enter, you as a user will enter, right? We got a response, and in the response earlier we were just taking choices, message content. Now we are also interested in model, messages, tools, and a tool choice. Because I just have one tool, I am just using tool choice as auto, right? It will just call that tool. Now I'm writing the if else loop. So if the response message dot tool calls, what does this mean? If within the response message the value of tool calls is true, then it will go. If it's doing a tool call, that means it doesn't know the answer, right? It doesn't know the answer. So then what it will do is it will actually then call the Google search function. We are asking it that if you don't, if it doesn't, if tool call is true, right, then we are actually doing a Google search, and we have written the logic to call the Google search function that we created earlier, this function, right? And then we just fetch the search results, and then we appended it or did something. And if it doesn't know, then obviously it can just answer directly, right? So we can run this, and then we can pass this question. Now there will be a thing here, it will still probably not give the answer, right? LLM doesn't know the answer. It's saying it's performing Google search, and after performing Google search, it actually told me that India won the World Cup in 2026, right? So this is how LLM applications are designed. If you're just okay with the basic how Python functions are written, how do you pass parameters, how do you call parameters, what is a list, what's a dictionary, what is dictionary of dictionaries, what is list of dictionaries, you'll be okay understanding the code, what's happening, and you'll be able to design an application. This was it for today. Probably will come up with more applications soon. Thank you.